Hey everyone, just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to the show. We're thrilled that you're here and enjoying the content. This podcast is completely free for you, but if you'd ever consider supporting the show, we truly appreciate it. One way you can do that is by using our affiliate links. These are links to products and services that we've mentioned on the show. And if you make a purchase through one of them, we might earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. It's a great way to show your love for the podcast and help us keep creating awesome content.
Blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day. Whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom, this podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates, and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Thank you to all of our subscribers, new and old. I appreciate all of the support that we've received from this wonderful community. You can listen to us via Apple, Spotify, and everywhere that podcasts are available. So don't forget to subscribe if you have not yet, and stay tuned. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We are parents and advocates who love our children. We are sharing our own personal experiences. So today we have a guest, which I'm really excited to talk to again. We actually recorded a podcast earlier in the month and I was having some technical difficulties. And we just decided that it would be best if we just re-record it. But I'm thrilled because you will see her face everywhere, especially if you are following like the Smile Train Instagram and CleftCon and all things Cleft and Craniofacial Awareness Month. Really thrilled to talk to Monica today. Monica is a devoted wife and mother of 3 who live in Kokomo, Indiana. Over the last 11 years, Monica has immersed herself in the cleft and craniofacial community, becoming a trusted parent advisor to fellow cleft families at one of Indiana's leading healthcare institutions, Riley Hospital for Children. She is also founder and executive director of Legendary Smiles. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the second chance to come back to this and have this conversation because we were both having massive technical difficulties. So I'm crossing my fingers and praying over the equipment today that we will be good to go.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for you because I always think about the commitment that other people have to this as well. Of course, I'm the host, and so I'm like having all of these conversations, but also it's your time and your space to talk about things that are really hard. And I'm just really grateful that you were wanting to come back, eager to come back. Yeah, so just excited about that. Before we got on, Monica was talking about her hair, so I have curly hair myself, and she was talking about how stylists are so scared. And my immediate thought is they should be, because the curly girls, I really do not like when people say that they know how to style curly hair and they really don't. It's okay to say no, because I will leave your chair looking like Edward Scissorhands.
For sure. Yeah. And anybody with curls is going to be scared of shrinkage. And what are you doing? And I have no hair skills. So I'm trusting you. I'm sitting in your chair telling you all the things like, okay, this is what this part of my hair does, and this is how this part of my hair curls, and it's different, and all these different curl patterns, and wash day is always going to look different than 2 or 3 days after. And it's always this big thing. And you spend all this time trying to preface, okay, this is my hair type and my curl type, and this is what I use. And like, I want to maintain length, all these things. But yeah, I styled my own hair. I was like, I want to see how you do it. And I'm like, awesome. I'll be happy to show you because I have somewhere to be. I know we're just doing a recording, but yeah, definitely it's an experience. And I'm like you, please don't promise me the world. And then I leave looking like my hair's too textured and my curls have to recover.
Yeah,
so
but
it's the little things. Just shape it. Don't take length off.
yeah, and I think that's wonderful. What Monica was sharing with me is that she's getting prepared to present at ClefCon, which is why she's gone to a stylist to just refresh her look and things like that. And so I'm really excited to see you at ClefCon. I've seen the lineup, I think, but what do you plan on talking about there?
Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but I need a little bit of help. If you're listening to this on the Apple Podcast app or YouTube, you may see a follow plus sign or a subscribe button. If you're able to, it would mean the world to me if you could follow or subscribe. That's the best way to support this show. If you subscribe, I'm able to show it to potential guests or different brands. It helps to grow the show and reach more communities to continue building awareness about the cleft lip and palate journey on a global scale. Thank you so, so much. Back to the conversation.
So I'm going to be on a panel with 2 other people, and my lovely friend Vicky Stoll is going to be our moderator. So we are trying to go over a list of questions right now just to share our story and obviously be sensitive to things that are hard for people to talk about. We can cherry pick which ones we want to try to answer. And of course, we have a short amount of time to do it. When you can have all the time in the world to talk about cleft, you need more than just a half an hour. But yeah, so I'm going to be on a panel sharing some of our story. I'm really looking forward to it, meeting a lot of familiar faces and people that I've only known virtually until this point. So yeah, it's an amazing opportunity. So grateful for Smile Train for giving me this opportunity to get up on stage and share. It's something that I've wanted to do, an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. Is it your first time going?
No, I actually started years ago. I attended virtually. And then last year I went to New York, and that was my first in person. And then this will be my second in person in Houston.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I'll be there. So we'll see each other in person. Really excited about that. But I've met so many families, but I'm like so nervous for some reason about going and seeing everyone. Of course, this will be my first year going, but I am just so excited to really connect with people. I shared earlier, like I've been holding these conversations in this space for mothers to speak about their experience and stuff. And so it's been an honor to do that. So yeah, I've had a lot of very deep conversations with people, and then I'll finally see them in person. And
that's what makes it even more rich. I have done the same thing, not in the podcast form, but just people on the advisory council that I'm on. We stay after and have these amazing conversations, and I will never forget it to this day. So I was hushed about going. I actually took one of my board members with me, and we were like, I wasn't publicly, oh yeah, I'll be there. Cause I'm like, what? Something happens and we can't make it, which would really suck. I don't want to disappoint people. Not that we're people pleasing, but I was like, yeah, it'll be a total bummer. And we worked it out and had my husband stayed home with our kids. And I was like, girls trip to New York. Sounds amazing. We fly everything. There were some hiccups with luggage, but we're there in one piece. And I'm checking into the hotel, and I don't even see her, but my friend Sonia comes and like almost tackles me and gives me the biggest bear hug I've ever had from a human on this planet. And she's, oh my gosh, you're here. And so it's going to be a lot of that. You have a name and a face, and you've had these amazing conversations, but there's nothing like being in person, meeting this person officially, it's such a rich experience. I encourage anybody, virtual is amazing too, but trying to make it's an amazing, love-filled, warm environment where you can go and be yourself and you don't have to worry about keeping up appearances or what are they going to think of me? Like, the Cleft community is one that is accepting and loving, and it's amazing. You'll experience it here in a few weeks. I just can't even describe it. It's incredible.
Oh, I love that. I look forward to just connecting with people, I think. And it's a great way to describe it as like rich, because you do feel like I feel like I know everyone, but then to meet them in person, I think it's different. So I don't know. I have butterflies about it. It's weird. It's a weird place to be, but
that's not a bad thing. That's excitement.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens. So I want to go back to where this all started. Your dear and sweet boy, Henry. 11 years you've been a Cleft advocate. So let's start from the beginning of where it all began, when you learned about Henry's cleft.
So I was very fortunate to learn about, and unfortunate is a specific word, fortunate to learn about his cleft when I was 19 weeks pregnant. It was a shock. It came out of left field, and we thought we were just going in for a routine anatomy scan, and they were taking a little bit longer to do the test. And I'm like, I want to know if it's a boy or a girl. Completely carefree. It's probably the last time I was ever truly carefree, because I was like, oh, just happy and pregnant and didn't expect anything. And I got a call from my doctor, and I just remember it just felt like my whole world was to a screeching halt. It was obviously tears, a lot of fear. Like, how am I going to do this? Did I do something wrong? So many of those common questions that moms ask themselves when they're receiving a diagnosis like that. And it was no fault to my doctor. It was just a short and sweet conversation. Oh yeah, your son's going to have a cleft lip. Expect the cleft palate as well. We're going to get you to maternal fetal medicine. Our office will handle scheduling all of that, and hang up. And it was like, okay, here I am just sitting with this news, which is why a lot of people are like, turn to Google and I want to learn more about it. And it's just too much to try to do that off the bat. But I didn't know anything about cleft at that point. And it was like, okay, I need to know what we're up against. No, I have no family history. I don't even know anyone with a cleft. Like, I don't know. It was a kind of a weird time. And I just wanted to be excited that we were having another boy. Mm-hmm. And now you're faced with this big, heavy, scary thing to try to process. But it really took the rest of my pregnancy to accept it. And I'm running to all these appointments and in-depth ultrasounds, and we're able to meet with our first surgeon ahead of time. And so that kind of put me at ease. But yeah, I'm definitely not going to say that was an easy period by any means. But I felt once we had him, because I was bracing myself for NICU time and tube and NG tube and all this stuff. And his birth was uneventful. I was the one that had postpartum preeclampsia and couldn't hold him and was puking, and just, it was a bad situation. But he didn't have to spend any time in the NICU, and he came out hungry. So I can't complain about that. But yeah, it was definitely, it feels like it was just hard and fast in the beginning. It's okay, now you've had him and you're learning how to feed him with this specialty bottle. And that Monday, we got home Sunday, and that Monday we had to wake up and go to our very first clinic meeting with our doctor and different professionals on our Cleft team. And we were like a deer in headlights. Our room flooded with residents, and I'm just like, okay, wow, like, you're throwing all this information at me, and I am very hormonal and still gray from having a C-section, and I can barely move, but here I am.
During the ultrasound, did they tell you? So they didn't tell you right then and there, or like immediately after the appointment. They waited until you got home. Did you find that odd that nobody said, okay, everything's okay? Or they told you what you were having, but they just didn't mention the cleft?
I don't think, because based on my other pregnancy after Henry, like the tech told me I can't tell you what I see.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, but can you really tell me? Because I have a kid with a cleft, like nudge. That was, I don't think they're allowed to do that during the ultrasound. I had to wait for my doctor to get the report first and then call me.
Yeah, that's
So,
yeah. So I've heard of this go different ways. Like now that I think about it, so I was sent to an OB to have my ultrasound, but I was being seen by a midwifery. So they would send me down the halls, but it was on the same floor. So it was like, go get your ultrasound and then come back. So they would have that kind of report right away. But if that's not structured that way, then you would have to wait. Like I would have had to wait the next day for them to call me to tell me, give me any information about if I wanted to know the sex of the baby, all of that thing. So they were able to tell me right away after. So Giselle was cleft palate affected only. So when I got my scan, they were like, oh, we also didn't want to know the sex of the baby. And she was just like, everything looks normal. And my pregnancy also went on as uneventful. I was also, thank God, I didn't really have anything like, I didn't have preeclampsia or anything like that. I was miserable. I hated it. I will say that over and over again. I don't know. You had 3, right? I don't know how.
I do have 3. I say that a cautionary tale because all of my births have been an event. Of course, with Henry, I had all these fears that once we knew about his cleft, oh my gosh, that means this. And different doctors or nurses would say, yeah, expect this to happen. If it doesn't, be thankful. As far as the NG tube and NICU time, and I didn't know if I could deliver where I did with my other doctor because, did I need to be somewhere else since we were high risk? And then I was the one that developed postpartum preeclampsia and had to be put on a magnesium drip, which is from the devil. If you've ever been on magnesium, the best way to describe it, because I was already like, I had family coming and seeing me and I'm like, yeah, I have this headache and I've had a low grade fever. And the nurse says, you need to get on your side right now. And we're taking you back over to the labor side and you're going to have one nurse. And she's, everybody needs to go. And so they schlepped me back over. And no matter what they gave me, my blood pressure was not being stabilized. So they had to, like, it was up like 200 and something. Okay. It was like scary high. So my doctor was up all night with me. She actually came in to check me the next day because she's like, you had us all worried. And I was like, yeah, I've been with a fresh C-section. I've been vomiting. And she's like, we got to put you on magnesium. When you get an x-ray at the dentist and they put the big like cloth on you, okay, that's like super heavy. So imagine about 3 of those on your entire body, head to toe. And I could only open one eye, like all the way. The other one was like halfway open. I couldn't raise my arms. I was just laying there like a bump on the log in a hospital bed. Couldn't hold my baby, couldn't feed my baby. And I've got this medicine that's like slowing me down so I don't have seizures. And I'm like, okay, I'm feeling better. Can I please get off of it? And they're like, no, 24 solid hours on this medicine. And so obviously Henry,
after he was born or before?
That was after. Yes, it was post. So I had no leading up. All of my blood pressure readings were fine, which makes it even more rare because it was postpartum and my body was like shaking and freaking out and blood pressure spiked and all this stuff. So I'm very fortunate that they caught that and took immediate action when that happened. So yeah, it was like 24 hours on that. And then they actually gave me blood pressure medicine in that first 6-week postpartum before my checkup, and everything was fine.
So having to go through all of that with Henry, where was he during all this time? Because you said he didn't require any NICU time or anything. So was he just there in the room being cared for by others?
Yeah, he spent a little bit of time in the nursery while I was recovering, but the nurses basically, and that's a funny story. So my doctor didn't give anybody in the OR any heads up about his cleft. So when he was born, we're like, oh my gosh, he's so beautiful. And they were all looking at us like waiting for this massive freak out. And we're like, oh, if we had known that, we totally would have messed with them big time. But yeah, like I was lucky to have an amazing nurse who taught my husband how to use a Haberman bottle, and then eventually taught me once I was able to open my eyes and not puke everywhere. But yeah, we actually fed him with a preemie nipple and then moved to the Haberman. And I definitely feel like overall that is something that's an untapped market. Nurses need that education, because I talk to a lot of families who are like, do I need to deliver somewhere else? Can I, like, there's a lot of education that needs to happen with that situation. Because you don't know what you're doing. You're relying on them to learn how to do that. And thankfully, we were able to go straight into our Cleft team appointment. And of course, they have a person for feeding and speech and audiology and ENT and all the things, and get you set up. But sometimes there's space in between birth and that first appointment where you're trying to juggle everything by yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's critical time as well, because that's really the reason why Giselle ended up in the NICU, was because of not being able to feed properly. And I think in my case, I was surprised at birth, but there are so many mothers, I feel like, that don't necessarily realize that, yeah, you can have all the bottles and you can be so fully prepared for this whole experience. And kudos to you, like, for looking into these things and really trying to learn. You don't really know how your baby is going to respond to each bottle. And so I would encourage people that if one doesn't work, to switch. I think there's a fear in that, because maybe your hospital is telling you, like, no, go with Dr. Brown's or go with Haberman or whatever. But if you're feeling like, hey, this isn't working, or there are pretty much 3 options or 4, you could use a syringe or something. But the most important thing in the beginning is really to get them to feed. And because that's the way that they can stay out of the NICU, as long as everything else is.
Absolutely. And even after coming home, like, I'm not going to lie, like, trying to figure out a Haberman bottle at 2 a.m. and not spray my ceiling with formula, that was before Dr. Brown's. Their feeding system is so much more conducive now. But you're right. You have this, like, I'm relying on you for information, and I'm getting frustrated because all I want to do is feed my baby. And then because of Cleft, like, you're not able to breastfeed if there's Cleft Palate. You're already working through all of these emotions and hormones. And so you're sleep deprived and all these different factors on top of everything. And everything just feels hard.
Yeah.
For us, we went into that first appointment like a deer in headlights. But then they're like, yeah, we want to make an obturator for him. And it's going to help keep his teeth from being misaligned. And we're going to do Dynacleft tape. And so now it was like, okay, all these pre-surgical measures that we didn't anticipate. And I was telling the girl who did my hair today about Houston and Smile Train. And it's like, yeah, my son was born with a cleft. And we were talking just briefly about that. And so did you know ahead of time? And I was like, yeah. And just giving her a 10,000 foot view of Cleft. But it's like, yeah, it was really hard to feed him in the beginning. It was just my husband and I that could do it. And she's, oh, why? And I said, because of all these different factors that we had. Like, we had this obturator, which, no joke, is, for those of you who don't know what an obturator is, it's a little prosthesis. It's like a little retainer that you just tuck in their mouth, and it acts as a makeshift retainer, makeshift palate when the tissue and the anatomy is not there. So this little thing cost $700. And I was like, I don't want to replace this because I'm in sticker shock. But he has to have this to live, to eat and thrive. Yeah, I was just telling her that I felt all of these stares on me from the very beginning with the tape and the obturator. And I'm going to CVS buying Polygrip for my infant. And I would always like joke about it, obviously, because I use the sarcasm and the humor as a defense sometimes. But I felt like I needed to somehow give them a reason why I was needing Polygrip with the infant carrier in my arm. But yeah, it's because their mouth shifts so much in that first year and it grows and changes and then it doesn't fit as well. So we actually had another one molded for him at lip repair that worked much better.
Did you hear that they don't make obturators anymore? Like it's
Really?
it's like rare for teens to like it's hard to get them now.
I had never heard of a pediatric dentist up until then. I'm like, okay, so why is she coming in? And they're like, oh yeah, she's gonna mold his mouth. And I'm like, okay. So like you're learning on the job, right? All these different terms and, why we're doing what we're doing. And a lot of people I'm seeing now do the nasal elevator, which we should have done. I feel like that would have been helpful for Henry's nose because his cleft was so wide. He really never had a nostril. It was just his lip stretched out. So
yeah, I heard that. So maybe I'm thinking maybe the obturator was when the NAM became a little bit more popular, it probably replaced that. But yeah, no, it's fascinating everything that's been done in such a short period of time as well. How old is Henry now?
he will be 12 on the 25th.
Yeah, so 12 years ago, there are so many things that have been created and invented that are so useful now. I didn't even realize how new Dr. Brown's was because as you're sharing, like you only did you have a pigeon as an option?
So a friend of mine mailed me a pigeon bottle just as an option. And the Mead Johnson was also like the little squeeze bottle one. That was another option that we had. But he ended up feeding so well with the Haberman and he was gaining weight because obviously they want them to be at a healthy weight for that first surgery. So yeah, we never really changed because we had a good thing going on. Yeah, we definitely had to unbutton his little PJs to keep him awake and make sure that he was taking in the nutrition and not burning that off and all of that, working to eat. But yeah, it was a crazy time because there's so much of his care. It was all on us and it's a lot of pressure and you don't want to screw anything up. And all you're trying to do is get to that surgery. But in the beginning, I remember, especially like before I had him, I was like, can't they just do the surgery sooner? Like, why do we have to wait? Because our first surgeon was like, I forget what, 10 weeks and 10 pounds, I think, was their
rule of 10, that I've heard.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm getting a C-section. Can't you just stitch him up there? My humor fell flat on that. But I really, for all this struggle, like I got to a point where I'm like, I'm going to miss his smile so much. And I don't want it to go away. And that even through all of the surgeries that he's had, I feel like I have to do the mental work myself. Like even before I give him any type of heads up, like, why do we have to do this? Why was he born this way? And I have to get to a place of acceptance. And I did not expect to grieve his smile as much as I did. Mm-hmm. I was not prepared for that. So anytime I'm giving advice to moms, it's like, take the pictures. Do not be afraid. Take like an incredible, crazy amount because it's going to change. And he was 16 weeks old when we did it. And they just grow and change between the infant to the baby. And that stage is just so drastic. So
yeah. What was surgery day like for you all? Were you, I guess, like with the days leading up, I know like at first you were really anxious to do it quickly and then you fell in love with that smile. And then, so the day of, do you remember like what your mindset was?
Yeah, the day of was honestly, we had instructions from the nurse that we needed to cut off formula and do Pedialyte. I have all of that documented in pictures. Tears in my eyes doing it because I knew what was coming. So I have a little picture of him in his nursery holding him with Pedialyte. Thankfully, his surgery was early morning, like mid-morning versus be there at 5:30, the crack of dawn. I have had a lot of those under my belt too. And I'm like, oh, this is for the birds. But yeah, I just remember just being so nervous. I pushed him in his little stroller And then you have the time in triage when they're doing all their checks and anesthesia comes in and all that. I just remember just wanting to squeeze him and hold him as tight as I could, because if I had my way, I would be running him out of triage, out of the hospital to the parking lot and be like, we're not doing it. Nope, it's not happening today.
Yeah.
So you're having to like fight that maternal instinct, and handing him over, I think, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because I knew he would never be the same.
Mm.
And so I remember walking out, and we went and got food and like just the waiting, and then it feels like it lasts forever, but they're back in your arms even in a few hours. But I'll never forget seeing him I was not prepared for seeing him in recovery, because it's basically an open room with curtains, and I am not prepared to come into this environment already being as fragile as I feel. Like tears were like right here ready to come. And then just hearing all the different kids and the sounds, and this is like overload. Just remember seeing him and almost not even recognizing him, because he had all the steri strips over his little mouth, and he was super swollen. And I was like, it just messed with me. Like my brain like had to catch up. It wasn't until we were in our hospital room and I could hear him coo and make more sounds, and he's hooked up to all these leads. But it was like, okay, we're going to be okay. And we syringe fed for a while before we went back to the bottle. So yeah, we were in the hospital one night for observation, and then they let us go the next day. So I'm grateful for that. I know a lot of families have multiple nights in the hospital, but just seeing how strong he is and how he recovers so well. That's another thing I was telling the stylist today. Henry is so strong that sometimes it's like it never even happened. Like his tonsils, he was 2.5, but he came home and played trucks.
Yeah.
Like nothing happened. I'm like, oh, this kid is next level. Seeing him recover and be as strong as he is, that's what gives me the strength, because I'm like, I'm right there in the thick of it. And he's adapting, and he's able to even play with the immobilizers on. I have a picture of him playing in his little Fisher-Price car, straight arms with the immobilizers.
It's going to stop me.
Yeah, very, very much. But like, that just showed me how resilient he was, even with palate repair. And I was a basket case for that, because I was like, again, it's unknown. It's scary. You hear the horror stories when you're in the hospital. Oh yeah, this little girl came in and she had hers done and she was refusing medicine, and they went to put the syringe in and ripped open her stitches.
What?
No joke, because she turned her head and it just went. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm afraid to touch my kid now, because like, what if something like that happens and it's my fault? I can't even imagine putting him through something like that
and you
again.
think, what are the odds? But then you know that you are the odds.
Exactly.
You're like,
yeah, exactly.
This is like rare, but the rare thing happened to me.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen to us. I'm just learn to expect the unexpected, right? So for that surgery, I probably had the first panic attack I've ever had. I actually knew one of the nurses. I saw her in the hall, and I was like, I'm doing okay. Like, I'm getting to the elevators to go downstairs. And I felt like I could just feel my heartbeat in my ears. And I was like, I'm not going to make it. Like, I'm not going to make it even to the waiting area, because I have so much fear about what's going to happen. And again, less than 24 hours in the hospital, he got a sippy cup in recovery, and he was eating and drinking and was perked up at 2 a.m. I'm like, okay, we're going to watch movies and we're going to play and everything's fine. And they dismissed us. And I was like, okay, we're doing all the right things. We've got the arm immobilizers on, and I thought everything was great. And then we went in for his post-op appointment and a fistula had formed. And I was like, dang it, I did everything we were supposed to do. And his fistulas are common. His cleft was very wide. We started in the middle, then stitched back, and then stitched up the front. And he's like, just those kind of things happen. And sometimes they're unavoidable no matter what you do. Because we had to cut off the bottle early. So that I was dealing with that. And I was already having issues feeding him baby food. That was a struggle. We were in feeding therapy, which thank the Lord for my amazing occupational therapist that helped us through that. She helped me sippy cup train. We found out that he was tongue thrusting, like he wasn't even using his jaw to chew, which I had no idea. I'm like, I just know I can't get him to eat. Like more's coming out than going in. When you have that struggle, and I finally asked for help, and it was like, oh, there's a reason why.
Yeah. Did you all have those updates for that you get like on your phone for when they're back in surgery?
We don't have the cool things on the phone or the little handheld things. We actually just have a nurse come out and give us an update like once an hour.
Yeah. I remember sending Giselle back for surgery, just like that feeling that I had, like I was just really anxious. And it's so funny how everyone like thinks the same, or our bodies react the same. Cause I follow someone on Instagram and her son just recently had surgery. I think the Instagram name is Hella Della. And her little boy, her sweet boy, he's actually struggling right now. But yeah, before he went in, she posted that she immediately was like, let's go to the cafeteria. And I'm like, I'm like, I gotta go to the cafeteria to eat my feelings.
And that was actually suggested to us, like when we checked in at the waiting area. She's just, give me your cell phone. We'll keep you updated. We can always call you. And I'm like, okay. And like I said, we had to be there literally at the butt crack of dawn, like 5:30 in the morning. Okay. So I am preserving the hair and makeup. I sleep in my clothes. It's so stupid to be there that early, but we're like an hour and 15 minutes from the hospital. So I'm not even going to look in the mirror. I'm going to brush my teeth. I can't feed him. We just need to get out of there. And usually our surgery is at 7 or 7:30. So I've had so many of those where I don't want to eat in front of him because it's not fair. And I'm like, I can eat after we get him all squared away. And so, yeah, when I go and eat my feelings or cry in my breakfast, able to do it in a quiet space and update everybody that's praying and update family and friends and stuff that he's back. And then we eventually make our way back to the waiting room.
Yeah, we have that cool thing now. Cool is relative, but it's they'll text you and they'll say like a patient or your baby's in surgery now, baby is recovering. So they'll give you those types of updates while you're just like hanging around the hospital or trying to find food or things to like keep your mind off of what's going on. And also something that you're referencing as well that people may not know is usually they take the youngest patients first. So that's why these appointments are so early in the day, because they haven't eaten all night most of the time, so they want to make sure that they get them done first. And I was in a similar situation where so the hospital was about an hour and 15 minutes away from my family as well. And what we actually ended up doing is staying the night at the Ronald McDonald House. And of course, naturally, because that way I didn't have to wake up at like 3 a.m. Her surgery was at 5, I think. And it was an hour and 15 minutes. So we would have been it would have been wild. So we stayed there still, of course, like you, even though I was like down the street. I'm so anxious and so awake that I'm I'm pacing the room. I'm not in my home, so I'm not comfortable. So it was just like,
right.
But yeah, just if you're able to take advantage of that type of thing, I feel, I don't know, forever indebted to the Ronald McDonald House for some reason. I just think that you see so many families there, and we were there for one night, but some of their children have been in the hospital for weeks, months, and they do very important work. I didn't pay a dime to stay there. And yeah, so that's why I feel like that work that they do is really important and valuable.
Definitely. And I think anybody who's helping you when you're in your most vulnerable self, you're like, they're always going to have a soft spot. Yeah. Like that's how all of his therapists were, except for the few stinkers that we had, the ones that really saw him from 10 months to 3 years when we did first steps. Like, I was a hot mess when we had our last appointment. And I was like, you can't even express. And I know they have like lots of people use first steps, but I'm like, really, like, I'm forever indebted. You have taught him so much and helped ease going into the school system for speech. Like, all of that was explained, and it was just so helpful to have somebody help us navigate who to talk to and where to be. And I just forever grateful for them.
Yeah. How do you think that, like, a mother who's preparing for surgery or just like somewhere, anywhere on the journey, right? How can they manage the anxiety or the strong emotions that they feel in this whole thing, whether that's like diagnosis or just getting ready for surgery or just no sleep from post-op? And this is wild.
Yeah.
Think about.
That's a great question. In my, like you said, finding that voice for advocacy, I have been there many times, with as many times as we have gone through surgery with Henry. And it's not just surgery and recovery. It affects your whole family, right? And it's the therapies, it's the appointments for all the different specialties. It's a lot that you're putting in for cleft care. So in all of the work, in all of the families that I've talked to, they're all at various stages. Sometimes they're just finding out. Sometimes they're trying to find a dentist who knows anything about cleft, or they're at the orthodontic stage and they want to have somebody who knows what they're talking about, not somebody that's going to go in and just do whatever. The biggest thing I can do is lend a listening ear. I'm never like, oh, you should do this and that. It's a really, I guess I would describe it, a gentle way to come alongside you and just listen first and hear the frustration and assure them, give them permission. I know you're feeling like this and you're not always going to feel this way. Like, permission to be like, what did I do wrong? And all of the things with diagnosis. And then I'm afraid I'm going to screw up and it's going to be my fault. Like, you really are doing the best you can with what you have to work with. And so just really offering encouragement. That's one thing, pulling from my own emotions and knowing how I felt. If I had somebody that I could text or FaceTime or Facebook message, whatever, if I had somebody on the day of surgery and I could just say, I'm really struggling, will you pray for me right now? If I had that, that's what I'm trying to offer. I don't ever want to overstep and be like, oh yeah, I want to be part of this experience. But I'm telling you right now, if anybody was like, hey, I can't do this, I need you to come to the hospital, I'd be there in a New York minute. Like, I would not hesitate. I would drop everything and go. Because that's just, I know how hard it is. And not everybody's going to need the hand holding. And if you have people coming to the hospital with you, like, that's fantastic. I did not. It was my husband and I the whole time. I had other kids at home and I would ask for my family to take care of them overnight. But one of the experiences that really stood out to me in just our own journey was when we switched churches. And I remember Henry always had something coming up. You're always just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I remember just asking for prayer, and I had his children's pastor say, I would like to come to Riley with you. Like, I want to meet you there. And I was like, this has never happened before. Like, it's so much pressure just on us, but to have somebody to sit in the wait with eat breakfast with you, that just spoke volumes for somebody else to see it, because you just feel all the pressure. It's all up to you. And you take all of that in and internalize it. And I don't know about you, but white knuckle it until you can process later.
Yeah.
Because I have to be strong for my child. I don't want them to see me upset and crying. Like, I put my poker face on, and I basically go into machine mode, that I don't want to be rattled, because then I feel like I'm not being strong for him. You know, I have learned through the years, through like just journaling and self-care, and no, and even starting therapy again last year. Oh, there's a lot of bottled up Cleft stuff that needs to come out, just with all of the experiences that we've endured and thought, how are we going to make it through? Like one of his surgeries was canceled because they heard like a whistle in his lungs. And I was like, okay, he's not had asthma. Like, he's so sick all the time. I need him to go through with this, because it was to work on that fistula. Because he was speech delayed and all this stuff. And I'm like, remember just being so angry that everything was canceled. And come to find out, we realized that he had all this sinus blockage going on, and we had an impromptu sinus surgery, and then that led to the fistula repair, and then recovery for the everything else. Like, that led to getting his tonsils out. So that season was like 3 surgeries inside of like a few months, and it was like one after the other. And I'm just thinking, I can't even believe what you're telling me right now. Like, how can his tonsils be like almost touching? Like, you can't delay something like that. You have to do it, as difficult as it's going to be. But I remember that just being a season of what just felt like constant chaos.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
was going to ask you, how many surgeries has he had?
So our running total is 13.
Oh, wow.
For right now, in 10 years. That's everything from lip, palate repair, sinus surgery, which we were not anticipating, the fistula, an adenoid shaved, but also just a lot of people go in and do a lot of work on the nose, and then it always goes asymmetrical as their face grows. And so we're doing little things that we can to help with that, like just stretching the tissue and stenting it. We went back and revised his lip scar. He had teeth removed. It's a lot. So, and I've actually had nurses in the OR be like, oh, this is all for Cleft. And I'm like, have you not read his chart? Like, it's all right there. And I'm like, yeah, it's not just a one and done surgery and you're good to go. A lot more complex.
Yeah. So you talk about advocacy, and I love that. I guess the good in all of this, right? Like, it's not all for nothing. Now you're an advocate. You can help so many other families. You can walk with them and talk with them. I'm similar in a way that, like, I talk to people online, and then, like, I know that their children are going through surgery like that day, and I'll say, hey, I'm saying a quick prayer for you all. And then I think to myself sometimes, oh, maybe they're like, am I being annoying? I'm really inside my head a little bit sometimes. And so I'm like, is this annoying, or is this like helpful? And so I don't know, like, at the end of the day, I make the decision based on what I would want someone to do. I know that I'm the type of person that may not be able to respond right in that moment to someone if my daughter was going through surgery, but I definitely would feel like, wow, this person was thinking of me and they reached out to me, and I will eventually reach back out. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Legendary Smiles and the work that you've been doing at Legendary Smiles, and just a little bit more about what that is.
Yeah. And to touch on what you just said, am I being annoying? I definitely thought that same thought, because I'm like, I have people in my life that are like that to me, like almost like they're offering empty assurance or toxic positivity. And I'm like, no, I just need to vent. I don't need you to assure me, I don't want that. And I think anybody who has any conversation with me or any interaction knows I'm going to tell you the truth. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I am going to tell you how hard it is. But at the end of the day, you're never alone. And I think that's something, you know, with any diagnosis, you feel isolated and you're like, nobody else understands. But that is a lie. That is not the truth. There are so many people who feel exactly how you do, and you just haven't met them yet. And like you said, I would want this if I was going through it, if I was in your shoes. You may not know that person well that you're helping, and that's okay. That's 100% okay. But if you say, hey, I'm going to stop and pray for you, have the integrity, do what you say you're going to do. That's something that I've learned. Because I have a social work background, and I knew I wanted to stay home with my kids, and having Henry and the cleft diagnosis and all of it, it made me find my voice and want to research and understand and get my hands on resources. And I knew very early on, this is how I can use my social work skills of connecting, navigating the system and navigating medical care and medical PTSD and just different aspects of cleft care. I was doing that on just a smaller platform ever since he was little. I looked for a lot of support because I didn't have it. I didn't have it when he was a baby. At Riley, there wasn't a parent group. There was no, like, from finding out his diagnosis to giving birth, there was no mom to talk to. There was no one. And I'm just like, again, those feelings of isolation. What am I supposed to do? I'm going to screw this up. All of those thoughts that come into our head, knew that I needed more hand holding. So that's what I've tried to offer this whole time, whether it be just on a Facebook group and sharing our story and just saying, hey, this is what we experienced. And this is what my surgeon preferred. This is how I taught my son at 1 year old how to use a specific cup. We had to cut off the bottle. It's just, it's all these tangible things, you know, throughout the years, being able to speak at a college and talk to nurses about in their child development class and just be like, hey, this is my son. I had a whole presentation. And at the end, obviously it was open for questions, but I was like, raise your hand if you know somebody with a cleft. And all of these hands shot up. And I'm like, these are the types of patients that are going to come through your doors. And you need to be sensitive to all of the different aspects of cleft care. It's not just surgery, it's mental health, it's self-care, it's putting in the time and effort, and it's a lot. To speaking at Riley, they used to do this amazing cleft conference from like birth to adulthood and had medical students come in and nursing students and different professionals who would get up and talk about each stage of cleft care. And I had the opportunity to share our story, and they had real firsthand accounts of people who had done jaw surgery. And I was like, okay, that's the one we're terrified of now. The more you learn, but it's just through the years, God has just blessed me so much with just all these opportunities. And I'm like, I'm along for the ride. Wherever you tell me, I want to see this through. It's such a big part of our lives. We had gone to this new church. We were talking about this initiative that they were doing to raise money. And I was like, yeah, I'm just really convicted that we need to tithe, that this is our home church. And up until then, financially, knowing that you have all this medical debt because of your kiddo, that's another factor of cleft care, is the financial aspect of it. And I just couldn't shake the conviction, and not to get all churchy, but yeah, it was like, we need to do this. And I kid you not, in less than 24 hours, I had somebody reach out to me and say, I checked you out. Like, I used to have this parent group years ago, but you're the real deal. And I feel like this is something that you should do. And I was like, I've never met this person, but we talked about Camp About Face, which is through Riley Hospital. It's an amazing experience. Kids with cleft and craniofacial conditions can go for a week of summer camp and not have to worry about surgery or appointments. And they're seeing kids that look like them. And this is that I'd heard about since Henry was a baby. And I'm like, I can't wait for him to go. And then when he could go, COVID happened and they shut everything down and we weren't able to do that. But so this is a family that both of their kids had been through Camp About Face. And you should do this. And I was like, I've never run a nonprofit before. I don't know what I'm doing. And I had all these feelings of inadequacy. And I had my people are like my biggest cheerleaders. And they're like, why would you even give it a second thought? You're the perfect person to do this. And I'm like, I'm scared. And they're like, you're delusional. Like they really had to encourage me, because I let fear stand in the way of, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to run a nonprofit. All I know is this is the community that I want to serve. And I don't know what that looks like. And I don't have a name. And I have no training in this. And again, they were like, it's one step at a time. You don't have to have everything all figured out. All you need to do is baby step. Don't get scared by the big picture. So I had an amazing mentorship with my friend Emily Hayes. She runs Nadej, which is a safe house for sexually abused women down in Haiti. And we happened to go to the same church for a little while. And I called her up and I said, hey, I've got this big dream. I don't know what that's going to look like. And she had weekly phone calls with me and just said, okay, this is what we did. She gave me all the information. And every week she's like, you just blow me away. Like, I do this homework and you're doing it. And like, then you're doing more. And you can totally do this. The crux of Legendary Smiles is I want to be a resource and I want to support families in the cleft and craniofacial community. That's our mission. And going through those steps of finding a name and our tagline and bridging the gap between the hospital and the patients they see, coming up with the ways that we were going to support them. I did all that work and it was like, this is amazing. Like, just to see that come to fruition. So in 2020, we officially launched Legendary Smiles. So I know, woo.
Track.
Yes, yay. Which is just surreal to look back and be like, look at just one simple yes to do this. Look at what God has done through this journey. And it's comforting to me because I'm a person of faith, and that's very important to me, knowing somebody already knows the outcome. Like every surgery, like I have people praying and we're praying to be brave. And it's just been amazing to see just how my faith has grown through all of this, and just being sensitive and listening. That's the biggest thing. But yeah, I'm actually the admin of Indiana Cleft Support, which is a Facebook group. We have over 400 people in that group. I would love to see it expand, because I feel like every state needs, like, there's the big groups on Facebook, which are a fantastic resource. I've been part of those for years, but to have each state having this group of people that don't feel so far away.
Yeah.
Like our group started it just as an Indianapolis group. And the girl who actually started it, this was 5 years ago, something like that. She's like, hey, I'm leaving for Florida. Here's the group. Wow. Like, I want you to take over. And I'm like, this is amazing. And then eventually getting involved with Smile Train, it's like doing the advisory council. It's like, wow, just more and more opportunities to keep sharing our story. And it's just been amazing being able to work with Riley and Cincinnati Children's and doing the marketing and stuff, getting our name out there and sharing who we are and what we do and the Cleft collections that we do. Actually, which is a cool story. I knew of the Ronald McDonald House for years. And I actually saw a lady with this little pillow on it. I went to school with her daughter-in-law, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these little pillows are so adorable. And she has volunteers make them, and she delivers them with books to the Ronald McDonald House.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's amazing. Like, how cool is that? And she's talking about encouraging literacy. And I'm like, okay, my wheels are turning. Like, how can I get a Cleft book in parents' hands? Because I love all of these different authors that have books about explaining Cleft and acceptance. And we made our own little notebook for Legendary Smiles. We give them out to new patients, but it's a notebook. It has a spot for keeping track of surgeries and what to bring to surgery, what questions to ask.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I wanted, again, tangible ways. Like, this is something I wish I had to keep track of information, because all this, you're just flooded with everything. So our Cleft collections are the journal, and then if their child has cleft lip or cleft palate, they have a different book that goes with that. And then our business card, a pen, and then, which is really easy for Indiana, I'm not really shipping anything. But for Cincinnati, we worked it out to have a little discount card. So they have a confirmation code. They can go on our website and we'll ship it out. So
Yeah.
it's little things.
Yeah, at the Ronald McDonald House, we got like a blanket, and I like cherish that blanket so much. Like I really love it, because it's a reminder to me. But also it's a reminder. I know this is Giselle's story, and this is something that happened to Giselle, but it is something that also happened to me. And it just reminds me of a time of our strength and our resilience. But just in closing, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned throughout all of this?
Oh, that's a good question. So many things. I feel like being on this Cleft journey has changed me, not only as a person, but how I mother. It was unexpected. And one of the quotes that I love is like, trying to navigate the Cleft journey, but is hard, but I love my tour guide. It's like, you have all this intense love, and I have had the comments made to me, you're so strong, you're so amazing, like, you're an amazing mom. And I'm like, I'm just doing what I need to do. That doesn't make me anything special. Sometimes it's hard to take those compliments, but I'm really just doing what needs to be done. And in our case, there's a lot to manage. But I feel like it's made me a stronger person. It's made me a more accepting person. And it's made me appreciate all of the people who have gone on this journey before me, because I have so much to learn from them. Yeah. And meeting people out in the wild, I like to use that, because you don't see clefts a lot. I know I didn't, but then once we were on this journey, it was like, I'm like a beacon. Like, I see them from a mile away. And I'll never forget one time, because we're in various stages of recovery, and you have people, I don't know about you, but we have had people bring us food, and it's so comforting having those people there to provide meals and stuff. But like, when you get to go out, you're like, finally, things feel normal. Even if Henry has to eat like butter or mashed potatoes or something soft. And we were at the Mexican restaurant, and I had brought food for him, and I had a mom stop me, and I recognized your arm immobilizers from across the room. Mm-hmm. And my son was born with a cleft, and he's like 30 standing next to her. And I'm like, your speech is amazing. It's just different things like that. Just the reminder that I'm not alone in this, even when I feel like things are so stressful. It's really taught me a lesson in resilience, and you stick to it, and you get up and you do it again, because Henry's my why for all of this, for Legendary Smiles, for helping other people, for helping him be the most well-rounded person because of this whole journey. So for me to see him being more empathetic, and like, I just have to dote on him a little bit, because he's been through so much, but he's still the hilarious, flexible, just hilarious kid that I've always known and grown to love. And throughout the years, just this deeper love of like, all of these things that you've been through, you've never let it stop you. You you carry on and it's just part of your story and it doesn't define who you are, but it's brought out all of these amazing character traits that I'm seeing and so much strength in him. And that's what I want for other people too. You can see what we've been through and come out on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And I'm so excited to see you at CleftCon and to hear.
I know. It's anytime we get on the subject of Cleft, it's like you just feel like you can talk all day, but I'm excited. Like one thing I loved about New York was seeing everybody, but also the new connections that you make, and you can keep track of each other on social media. And that's just it's another friend who understands,
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen. I hope that you've enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.